This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and I help construction business owners maximize revenue and eliminate chaos. I've got a great interview with Gerri Dominikos today. She is the owner and CEO of Airlogix, AIRLOGIX. They do commercial HVAC and refrigeration work in New York City. And here's what you're going to learn about from Gerri. You're going to learn about the evolution of tradesmen and her experience with some of the skills gaps coming out of trade school. You'll learn about how and why you want to foster a customer service culture. You'll also learn some of the strategies and tactics that Gerri picked up in corporate America and is now applying in her small business, including how to hunt. What that means, how to hunt. Gerri also shares some of her learnings and advice from stepping in and taking over the family-owned business. We also talk a lot about mindset and how the game is won or lost between your ears, and she'll also explain what she means by the statement, revenue is vanity. Before we get into that interview, I've got a few resources I want to get in your hands. If you own or run a construction company, I want you to imagine this. What would it be like if you could schedule for revenue and you could drive your business instead of chasing it? What if you could design your operation so that you could stay out of cash flow crunch mode, you could make a healthy profit, pay yourself a healthy salary, and eliminate chaos in the process? What if you could have a steady source of leads so you could build the right kind of backlog without spending money on advertising? Well, I've got two programs I want to get in your hands for free. They're the Revenue Maximizer and the Contractor Sales Accelerator. They're worth about $4,000 combined, but right now you can get them both for free, plus a whole lot more when you claim your free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator program. You're going to get the Revenue Maximizer, the Contractor Sales Accelerator, plus a whole lot more. The Mindset Upgrade, the Leadership Masterclass, the Project Execution Formula, all of my best stuff. So if you like the podcast and you want to go to the next level and go deeper, get more practical, tactical, strategic stuff to put to work to help you eliminate chaos and maximize revenue, go get your 10-day free trial and get all of that stuff for free at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Again, constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Grab your free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator. If you own a construction business and you want to increase revenue 25 to 50%, if you want to eradicate the chaos in your business and streamline it and turn it into a well-oiled, profitable machine, then this is for you. I want to invite you to take advantage of a special offer for a free business breakthrough coaching session where you and I are going to get on the phone and we'll work together to help you create a crystal clear vision for what ultimate success looks like for your business and the lifestyle that you'd like for your business to provide for you and your family. We're also going to uncover some of the hidden challenges that may be holding you back or even sabotaging the growth of your business, and as a result, keeping you working too many hours and not getting the results you want. And when we're done, you're going to walk away from this session renewed, re-energized, and focused, maybe even inspired to get after it and turn your business into a highly profitable, revenue-generating, well-oiled machine. So if you want to take advantage of this limited time offer for a totally free business breakthrough coaching session, then all you got to do is go to constructionleadingedge.com/call. That's constructionleadingedge.com/CALL. And one more thing for you, if you own a construction business or you're planning on starting a construction company in the near future, I've got a free video series I want to get in your hands. Have you ever wondered, how do the big successful contractors do it? How do they grow consistently? Why don't they have cash flow issues? What are they doing that you're not? Well, I've got a free video series called The Secret Strategies of Successful Contractors that I want to get in your hands. And here's what you're going to uncover in this free video series. One hidden cost that causes a lot of contractors to bleed cash and they don't even know it. There's this new way of thinking that will help you drive revenue, deliver projects on time, and ultimately grow your business and take it to the next level. You'll learn about some of the things that big contractors do to succeed that very few small to medium-sized businesses do. And lastly, you're going to learn why some of the biggest problems you're facing may not be problems at all. So if you want to get this free video series, all you have to do is go to constructionleadingedge.com/owner, OWNER. Click the big red button that says, yes, send me the information, and you will learn some of the secret strategies of successful contractors. All right, without further ado, let's get to the interview with Gerri Dominikos of AirLogix. All right, Gerri, thanks so much for being on the podcast. How are you today?
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you. Doing great. How about yourself?
Good. So one of the issues that we talked about briefly before I hit record was skilled workforce shortage. And you have, you're in a unique position. You're in New York City, and we'll get into a bit more about your company and your story. But a good place to start would be, let's talk about the term that you used was the evolution of the tradesman. So talk a little bit about the kind of work you do, and then what are you seeing in your business when it comes to the skilled labor shortage, the mass exodus of skilled labor, the increasing average age of labor, whatever those challenges look like that you termed the evolution of the tradesman?
Yeah, it's a great question and a pretty hot topic right now. What I would say and how we're experiencing it is there has been this trend of, as probably discussed in maybe other podcasts that you've had, but this trend of the everyone's running to college to get these degrees so they could work in different environments and not the trades world. And forgive me, I'm nervous. I'm like tripping all over my words right now, but but basically how we're experiencing is that we get hundreds of resumes a day for people trying to join our field workforce. And what we're finding is the qualifications fall short at the entry level, and even beyond, if let's say that the credentials come in properly, meaning they have all their certifications, they've done their trade work, they have a little bit of experience, or even if they don't and they have their certifications and they went to the trade schools, we might meet a couple of people. What we're seeing is they're not equipped for coming on board with a contractor. So, and that's at the entry level. Like, what I'm trying to say is that the technical schools seem to have lost sync with the working world in terms of what employers need from the graduates they're generating.
What are the skills that are falling in that gap? What's missing? What are the trends that you're seeing that are missing?
Well, I would say on the technical side, the lack of practical experience. So, I think it's a very controlled environment in the technical school where, you get the theory, you get all the basics, you might have a lab environment where you work on a couple of things, but that's a controlled environment. When you get onto the field, it's a totally different animal, right? Like, you're dealing with weather conditions, you're dealing with, in our market, New York City, confined spaces and fast paced. Like, if you're in the refrigeration side, you're working in a kitchen around staff potentially of the restaurant, if you will. And those are things that a helper or an entry level tech wouldn't really have the knowledge of till they get there, which, and that's fine. But I believe that, because it's, I get that it's the employer responsibility to train on the job as well. And I'll get into that a little later. But what I'm trying to say here is that I think that if the technical schools would partner more with employers and really listen to what they're looking for, it would make a more quality, a higher quality outcome of their programs and make their graduates more marketable. So there's a lot of life skills. There's the administrative skill that's become a requirement for all of our technicians now, meaning in the past, maybe a tech could get away with not having the savvy to use a tablet and an automated software, but everything's digital now, and they're going to have to adapt to new systems. And so this applies to the young and the new in the career workforce, and then the super skilled, highly trained technician that may not be great on administrative systems, computers, time tracking, spreadsheets, whatever the case may be. What we're seeing is the demand for what I'm calling the business savvy tech. And so this requires not just the technical know-how and expertise, but also the ability to manage the administrative / housekeeping duties of the field portion of the job. What does that mean? Checking in through IVR, multi-facility management or multi-location national accounts right now are very much interested in managing their vendors' time. And so, which rightfully so, but there could be up to 3 or 4 different check-in procedures that a tech would need to be mindful of for the day. So it puts the onus on both the employer to have the right systems in place, but also the technician to have the basic ability, like the abilities or knowledge to work these systems or learn these new systems above and beyond the technical skill and expertise they already have, or at the very least to be open to be trained. So that's kind of the challenge that we're seeing here. Frustration from techs that have been in the market 30, 40 years, and they're amazing at what they do, but they're frustrated and annoyed by all the red tape of they just want to get in and do their job. Then you have the newer techs who may be a little bit more adaptable to the technology, but are lacking the years in. So it forces us to step up our game training wise, which is, that's a good thing for the company and for our staff. But we're seeing the evolution of the working world towards more everything's digital, everything is coordination, and it may not, the education that's available right now may not match what is needed in the market, if that's fair.
Yeah, makes sense. It reminds me, I remember when I was in college, I was in an engineering program, and I just rotated off a co-op term. I was in Orlando, Florida. I came back to school, and I was talking to my advisor, Dr. Gates. Dr. Gates said, "So how did it go?" And I said something to the effect of, I was really frustrated because I didn't get to do very much engineering. I was working on a job site, and it was a co-op, so I was like literally washing the boss's car, going to get snacks, and standing at plotters for 8 hours at a time. And I said, I was frustrated because I didn't get to do much engineering. And then he said, "Well, me too. Here's a guy who has been in engineering for 20, 30 years. And I think a lot of it was my expectation. So maybe part of the issue is people have an expectation that I'm going to come in and I'm a refrigeration tech, or I'm a finished carpenter, or I'm an electrician, and that's all I'm going to do. And
right.
I don't want to deal with customers. I don't want to lead people. I don't want to coordinate. I don't want to do paperwork. I just want to install crown molding, or I want to work on refrigeration equipment." And that's just not reality. If they're going to come into a business, then they're going to work with other people. You brought up a great point, especially working around an existing facility. That's a skill set in and of itself, to do your work while the customer is able to still function. But it seems like what do you think about soft skills? The customer interaction, is that a big issue that's missing as well, or are people coming out pretty well equipped for that?
I would say that they definitely get zero training, to my understanding, or for the people that I've personally interviewed. They never speak to training from that for customer service through their program. So I don't believe that that's part of the curriculum. What I will say is that some of the soft skills are definitely more in the individual, right? I've seen some excellent, very personable, very professional young applicants that are coming out of school that have the skills, and that might be something that's just part of their nature, or it was fostered in the home. What we've done as a company is we pay a lot of attention to making sure that that piece is in place for our staff, because that can make or break the customer's experience. It doesn't matter how good you are technically. It doesn't matter if you get the job right all the time. If it's a drag to deal with you, guess what? In this market particularly, there's at least 5,000 competitors in this New York metro market that do the same thing we do. So it's highly competitive, highly fragmented. It's really about making sure that not only are we technically proficient, doing the right thing, getting it fixed on the first time, or completing the job, on time and under budget, but also we have to give that service. We have to be conscientious and conscious of the customer's needs and look at things through their perspective in order to ensure that, we have a sustainable business relationship. So it's not like it used to be, I would say, in that the customer, of course, the customer is always going to be right. And as the employer, you better train your people on how to properly engage a customer, right? So I feel like that's our responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like getting the actual technical work done. That's table stakes, right? That's the expectation. And maybe that was good enough years ago, but now people are buying, they're really differentiating, and they're making a selection based on experience. And as I like to say, especially when I talk to commercial contractors who are going after the holy grail of work, which is to become the incumbent provider or to get to negotiate the second project, I tell people that, listen, your superintendents and your foremen and your field level frontline leadership, they have more effect on your second project sales or your repeat business than anybody in business development, because I've been there. I've been the client. I've been the owner's rep. And I can tell you, long after the business development people are gone, long after the person in the corner office leaves and the contract's signed, it's the people you're working with on a daily basis that influence the decision to work with them on the next project, or to completely hide the next project from them because you don't want anything to do with them ever again. So that's a great point. So let's talk about soft skills a little bit more. What do you guys do to train or to foster that customer service relationship in your people?
So for the field specifically, we have a 5-series customer service training module that's delivered via WebEx that should be completed within the first year of their employment. We do in-house trainings frequently, and then it's always mentioned in our toolbox talks as well. So we do our safety spiel, and then there's, we always will put in a little bit about a soft skill, whether it's courtesy, whether it's handling an objection professionally. It's just part of who we want our staff to be. And so we've come up with a series of what we believe to be transferable skills trainings that doesn't matter if you're on a build out or a quick repair service call, they apply. And so for us, it's really about increasing the awareness, training our staff to be self-aware and responsible for their behavior. So there is no such thing as, but this. You are an adult, you're responsible for your behavior, and as long as you are representing our company, these are the standards by which we behave. And it's something we do regularly, and we enforce it through emails and really try to make sure people understand that these are just values we want to be associated with our company in terms of professionalism, in terms of, even giving them some basic sales skills, even if they're not selling staff. You're representing the company. So to an extent, I consider that almost like an account management type sale where, you are the face of AirLogix during that moment. And so I give them a little bit of sales training, even though I don't have them selling as well, because I believe it's important just to understand the basics of interactions and basics of customer service. And then, of course, handling objections, answering a question. Sometimes we have certain clients that have very stringent protocols that we are requested to follow. And sometimes the client's representative at the level of where we're doing the work may ask for something that's outside of the parameters of what we need to do. We need to train our staff in what to do on those particular scenarios. So we do a lot of our trainings include scenario planning and scenario-based training. And we believe in a multifaceted approach to training and ensuring that follow-ups are given. So we don't just like set it and forget it. We'll reinforce our trainings periodically, and we check in with our staff to see during some meetings. We'll ask for feedback, like how have you used this between last session and now? Like, how have you applied this? And we'll get engagement, and we get them enrolled, if you will. We get them involved and engaged to understand why it's important for them to do it. Because in the beginning, that was an uphill battle. A couple of years ago, when we started doing this, there were a lot of eye rolls and sighs, and like, that people want to go out and do their job. They're not interested in sitting in training. And I understand and I respect that. I'm not making money when I'm training them either, but it's so important long term that we do this, because that's our reputation out there. And we want to not only have technically proficient, competent, responsible performers, we want them to be professional and as polished as possible in their communication. It makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's such a good point about training. I've seen some alarming statistics that the retention rate for information presented in a typical training approach, classroom, webinar, etc., the retention rate is about 27%. So that means almost 3/4 of the information is lost. It never actually shows up in real life. So it's so important to say it and then follow up. Really, as I tell people, like, I do some training, but people aren't really buying training. What they want is changed behavior. They want results. And the training is often the beginning of that process. But
absolutely,
the follow-up, the reinforcement, it could take, it's sort of like the sales process. It could take 6 or 7 or 8 touches to reinforce it, so people are ultimately getting it to show up in their behavior. So let's pause right now and tell us about your business. What kind of work do you do? I know you're in New York City, but talk a little bit about your business, what you do, where you're at, size of your company, and things like that, if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. So we work in the commercial, industrial, and institutional space. We are an HVAC, refrigeration, and commercial kitchen equipment contractor. We do everything from maintenance, service, repairs, replacements, ground up work. We do basically the full scope of services within our trades. The only thing we don't manufacture, and we don't design. So it's everything in between. And we serve the New York City metro area. So we have the 5 boroughs, all of Long Island, Westchester, and New Jersey. That's our service radius. We're going into our 35th year of being in business, and we are right now 55 strong and growing. So we'd be a lot more if we could find the right technicians. So we're hiring if anybody's listening. Careers at airlogics.co.
There you go. So how did, tell me about the story of how you got, well, what is your current position with AirLogics, and what's your story? How did you get where you are today?
So currently I serve as the owner and CEO of the business, and I have a long history with the company, as it was founded in the early 80s by my father, who came here with a suitcase and a dream. It's a typical immigrant story of come here, work hard, build something. And so I grew up, just kind of, my dad's idea of a Saturday with his daughter was, let's go on service calls. So, so I spent a lot of time in the field, and, but in reality, I kind of was in and out of the business through college, and after college went on to corporate America to do sales work and training of field sales personnel, and did that for about 10 years until the Great Recession of 08, 09. So I was a performer in my prior positions, and once the economy got to a point where it was not looking, it just was a very challenging year, and I was not used to not earning my bonuses. So I had a conversation with my dad in June 2009, and I was like, hey, do you have any work? And he goes, actually, we're building a data center and I need a project manager. So I left my prior employer and came right back to the family business. So it's like a little joke we have. It's like, yep, came running back to the family. But truly, from that time till now, it's been such an amazing journey. Seeing, again, every little aspect of the business, being able to implement changes and upgrade efficiency. So I started as a project manager. We did that work, and then getting more and more involved with the day-to-day operations, optimizing the way we did our dispatch systems, implementing systems to upgrade our capacity just by being more organized and efficient in-house. And the rest is all kind of history. We had our bumps along the road, and I learned a lot through them, but my biggest goal was to take this company into the next generation and grow the roots that were planted by my father. And so now my brother and I run the business. I have all the business aspects, everything, finance, marketing, legal, and human operations of the company. And the technical, outside of any larger plan and spec stuff, is shared by me and my brother. So it's been a really great journey. I brought a lot of what I learned in corporate America into the small business world, if you will, and I think that that's really been helpful as well. But I'm here and I'm not going anywhere, and I've got a lot of years in me, and I'm very excited to see how much more we can grow and impact our local community by providing work and keeping customers happy. So that's the long and short of it. I could talk for hours about it, but I was just joking with our HR manager about how I was the worst helper ever, because my dad would give me, he would ask for tools in our native language, and then I would not know what he was talking about, and he would be like, "You're not a good helper." And I'd be like, "Well, I'm not here to be a helper." So but yeah, so that's kind of my story in a nutshell. We could get into a lot more detail, but I wanted to keep it nice and short for you.
No, that's a great story. You mentioned you have the benefit of working in corporate America, and you brought some of that into the small business. I'm curious, what are one or two of the main things, whether it's a system or a mindset or an approach or whatever that might be, that you picked up in big corporates and brought it to a small business?
Definitely systems and structure. That was the first and foremost thing. I also studied organizational development. That was my MBA work. And so I had a lot of interest in the architecture of how business gets done. So for me, without giving too much detail, it was kind of reverse engineering the way we did things to get them to do more with less, right? So applying that principle of, okay, here's what you want, and how are you doing it now? Where are the redundancies? Identifying redundancies and reengineering processes, then solidifying the new ones, rolling them out, and making sure people follow them, and really explaining why we're doing it. So it can be what is it? So it can be locked in, if you will, right? Because it's one of the challenges we faced originally was, okay, this is just always how it's been done, and it's not broken, don't fix it. Yeah, but what if you could do better and more? So that was the first thing that I brought in. And the second thing was having learned how to hunt, if you will. So the one thing that I can say about my time in corporate America, they did a great job of teaching me about how to hunt. And whether that's for clients, leads, information, how to do things, where to go. And that's, I might be misrepresenting it, but that's the best way that I can explain it, because that's what it was like for me. Okay, we have this problem. Instead of kind of looking for advice or asking others what to do, I would first do my research, find out how to get it done, then bring the kind of creating the case for how are we going to get this done? How are we going to fix this? And then finding the most qualified options for either fixing a problem or finding the right expert to assist, if that makes sense. So I call that hunting, and it's applicable in the sales aspect and business development, but also in fixing problems. Like the last 10 years have not been issue free. They're not perfect by any means. But what I do know is that just being able to look at that and admit that, like, yes, we haven't been perfect, and we're looking to always correct whenever there's that opportunity. The goal is to strive for perfection. If you don't hit it, keep going,
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You have, like, at any point, an organization has multiple opportunities for greatness, inefficiencies, problems, whatever you might call them. And I see a lot of people turning in circles because maybe they're spending a little bit of time and energy on multiple problems and not really getting anywhere. So what's your thought process on how to select a problem to focus on, and then how do you get started? What are the first couple of steps in that you use in moving towards solving a problem?
So if I had a slew of problems, what I would do is, for me, I look at urgency and impact, right? So how important and how urgent and how much impact. And so the highest across the board scores get dealt with first. And then there's also the factor of, am I good at this? And if I'm not, do I have an in-house expert to pass it to? Delegate it to. And if I don't, go find that person or go become that person so you can deal with this.
So you said, let me pause for a second. You said look at what has the highest scores. Are you actually ranking these in like 1 to 5, 1 to 10? So it's more quantitative versus qualitative?
So it depends on the issue, right? So for example, if obviously we're in the business of, we're not a non-for-profit. So for us, it's really about, growing the business, driving sales. So if the problem is posing a financial risk, it'll probably get bumped up rather than, it depends on the issue, because if you have a people problem, that might need to supersede sometimes depending on that issue. So it's hard to tell you that it's an arbitrary ranking system based on what the issue is in that sense. But it is a 1 to 10, like how urgent, the urgency, that's something that I do internally in terms of systems. And I've trained my staff to focus on high impact results first. So the higher impact is the higher importance. What will make the most impact first, and so it's looking to preserve your company's goals, what does that mean? Keeping your revenue and margins intact and making sure your people are safe and that you're, and it's very basic. So for me, it's like, would I tackle, I don't know, maybe, I got to give you an example here because, okay, so let's say everything is a fire in my mind, truly. Instinctively, everything has to be fixed. But what I need to do is organize and sort and prioritize, right? That's the only way you're going to get it done. As a small business owner, you have 8 million things going on at once, and like maybe 1 or 2 people that can help you truly with the higher level, more sensitive things. And so for me, it's really about, okay, where am I going to make the most impact? Where am I going to get the most bang for my buck in my actions and activities, right? And make the most positive impact for the company. And that's kind of how I prioritize things. So maybe I won't worry about something that can wait. Like, can it wait? If it needs to be dealt with now, and am I the best person to do it? That's the first thing that I'll do.
Perfect. Yeah, I think what I heard you say, that's just part of your normal process, is that you're looking at problems in the context of all the other problems, not just dealing with the fire du jour that pops up or the one that is your pet project. You are looking at it in the context of everything else that's going on, being analytical about it, and then ranking it somehow and determining what's going to give you the most bang for your buck. With my coaching clients, I call them lead dominoes. Going by
I like that.
the 80-20 principle.
Yep.
The Pareto principle says you're
Yep.
going to get 80% of your results from 20% of your inputs. So especially if you're a small business owner and you have limited resources and limited time, then let's go hammer the nail that's going to get us the most bang for our buck. And then knock that lead domino over. If you do it right, if you pick the right lead domino, then it will make other problems easier to solve or irrelevant. And once that one gets taken care of, then go on to the next lead domino. Do the same process again. Test. I like to test potential lead dominoes against each other and say, all right, what if we did this? Or what if we did this? Sort of like it's the optometrist. All right, better one, better two.
Or two. Yes,
better one, better two.
I love that you said that, because that's exactly kind of how it works. Like you really articulated it properly. That's definitely the process. This or this, this or this, and move and act and act and act and act. Like don't procrastinate. Yep.
That's a big part. It's I guess the mistakes that I see people making would be first of all, not really defining the problem. They either act without really understanding what the root cause of the problem is. They will address symptoms of the problem and ignore the root cause of the problem, or they will get caught in the paralysis of analysis and not ever act. Or they, as I said earlier, they spin in circles, putting 1% of their energy in 100 different directions, and they never actually get anywhere. In my experience, most problems are much simpler to solve if you really just be strategic about it. If you'll spend some time, what is really the issue here? And then something else I picked up from this is the 40-70. A couple of decision-making rules I picked up. His name escapes me right now, but he was the chief of staff, Colin Powell. He has a 40-70 rule, and he said this applies in the military, but it also applies in business. He said, never make a decision when you have less than 40% of the information you think you need, and never wait to take action after you have 70% of the information you need, because it's a myth to think that you'll have 100% of the information you need. So get to the 70% mark and then take action and get moving and adjust course as you go. And the other thing that really helps me is to ask this question: when does my risk profile change? And that gives me a deadline. So if I have an employee who has just given their 2 weeks notice, then my risk profile is going to change really fast, and I need to take action on that. If I have something else that could be an issue 6 months down the road, then I have time. So establish when your risk profile will change, gather information. Until then, get to the 40% mark, take action once you are between 40 and 70, and then just get started. That's been my advice to folks, but no, that is helpful. Let me ask you a couple of questions about your journey in this business. What has been one of your most educational mistakes that you've made in business?
Ooh, there've been many. I have to tell you, and this is going to sound overly simple, but not trusting my instinct about a person.
This is just the spider sense goes off, your gut's telling you something's wrong, and are we talking about hiring someone? Is this an existing employee? Is it a client? Or maybe all of the above?
All of the above. So it applies, for me at least, it applies I've had situations in which it's applied to all three. And let me tell you what that means. Taking on a project that you just have a sense it's not going to go right. But and you're just, and there's nothing, because it's a hunch, you don't listen to it. Right? Like there's nothing factually wrong. It's just a feeling, right? And so, you don't want to sound irrational. So you're like, no, just push it aside. That has been a very, very expensive lesson over the last decade. And, it's happened to me with vendors, it's happened with clients, it's happened with employees. And, every instance has been in a lesson, and I'm grateful for the lesson because I believe we learn sometimes through our own failures. And, in the moment, I might not feel so great about it, but in retrospect and hindsight, it all comes to teach a certain lesson, and for me now knowing, it's like, check your facts, make sure everything is in order. But if you don't feel good about it, or if there's something off to you, chances are you're right.
Okay. So sometimes that hunch, there are hunches. How do I want to say this?
No, say it.
How this is something that I've run into. One of my favorite books is by a guy named Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about resistance, and he talks about resistance with a capital R like it's a person. And resistance says things like, this will never work, or you're not good enough, or you should probably back out, or you should pass on this. So how do you know when it's resistance that's trying to keep you from something good, and when it's wisdom trying to keep you from making a mistake? If you reverse engineer, like you talked about, if you work backwards, were there any indicators that helped you figure out, like, oh, that was wisdom trying to talk to me? Or does that make sense? How do you know the difference between fear/resistance and wisdom talking to you?
That's a very good question. And for me, it's a very clear discernment there. Resistance, I know my resistance well. And the good news is that I'm self-aware enough to know when it's resistance and see it and identify it. Doesn't mean that I don't stop feeling it, but resistance will not influence my decision making because I'm able to identify it. Resistance presents itself differently to me. It's more of an intellectual process or an ego-based process where it's like, oh, I don't like this or I don't want this, but you have to do it, as opposed to the intuition. There's a physiological response that comes with that intuition. The intuitive hit is very different than, I don't want to do this because I'm being a brat, or it's going to be hard and it's going to suck, but I know it's necessary. I believe that intuitive hits, for me, they have a physiological component that is not the same as the aversion that comes with resistance.
So is it literally like a physical, you feel it in your guts, uneasiness, like just something doesn't feel right? Is that what you're talking about?
To me, it presents itself as like almost, I'm trying to put it into words. It's difficult to express, but when I feel it, I know it. And it's, but resistance, the capital R resistance, it presents totally differently. There's no physiological response there. It's just like, I don't want to, you can't make me, as opposed to the intuitive hit that literally there's a neurological response to that, where you're kind of a little, just a little bit of a jolt that this is not what you think it is.
Got it. Makes sense. I had a conversation with one of my clients several months ago. We were talking about this same issue, and one of the things we landed on, one of the answers we came up with for the question of how do you know if it's resistance, is that resistance usually comes with an alibi, an excuse. Like,
yes.
If resistance will tell you, you don't need to make that sales call. It's Friday afternoon. They're probably not going to answer anyway. if they do answer, they're not going to want to talk to you. There's an alibi. Does that sort of jive with your experience?
That's got resistance like completely written all over it. That's the story, if you will.
Yeah.
Where we get stuck in the story and all the reasons why, and then it's BS, right?
Right. But if it's your gut subconscious telling you, hey, this is bad, it probably doesn't come with all that narrative. It's just just a response. No, that's good. That's good.
Same as the hand on the stove. You know not to do it. Like
Right.
the body protects itself, right? So that's exactly the difference.
That's good. You may have to write a book about that, Gerri. That's pretty deep. Okay, so now let's talk about this. Was there a situation that you went through that seemed really bad at the time, but now you realize it was actually good for you or good for the business? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, we had a transition year, if you will, where it just seemed like everything was blowing up. So it was, my father retired and things were, he kind of just left everything the way that he retired, the way he exited was, it's kind of, unfortunate because he suffered a career-ending injury and like, it was just like, here, figure it out. Like, okay. So, it wasn't too hard to do in that I was already very much involved in the day-to-day of the business and the strategic of the business. But what was difficult was I knew it was time to pivot out of the public sector and get into the more private corporate work. And that transition year was difficult because we were facing a lot of cash constraints, a lot of legal challenges, and I was doing it all by myself. So at that time, I hadn't learned that in order to do great things, you need support. So I hadn't learned that yet. And so I made it a lot more difficult for myself than it needed to be. Also, we were experiencing, we needed funding, and then we weren't in the best position at the time. And I was afraid to go talk to banks because I knew that, we're not a good fit, so why bother? That was resistance. That was a story. That was BS. And so I made it harder than it needed to be because it was like, that's pride. Like, it was BS. I was stuck in a story, And so what I learned from it was that that's all unnecessary. And of course, it'll never repeat again. But I learned so much in that year. But the biggest takeaway, so not only learning the how-tos and the ins and outs of like finance and funding your business and like, resolving cash flow issues, resolving tax issues, resolving people issues, figuring out marketing, the biggest thing that I learned was it doesn't have to be so hard. Ask for help and enlist people that you'd be very surprised. Like, even if that's not their main function, people would be much more, very willing to step out of their day-to-day role and give a suggestion. Even something that simple could make all the difference. And so I forced myself to suffer unnecessarily that year because I thought I could do it all myself.
So what do you think happens when you open yourself up and ask for help? You get the help. And it's not the boogeyman. Like, it's okay. Why do we feel like we have to be the Lone Ranger? And why did you avoid asking for help? What do you think what was the story that you were listening to that turned out to be wrong?
There were a few of them playing in my mind. First and foremost was like, oh, you're the boss. You can't look weak, and you have to have it all figured out. They're not going to look up to you if you ask opinions or if you ask for, if you ask for help. That was one, which is total self-sabotage. The other one was being that I was, the offspring of the founder. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. I felt I had to prove myself even more because I think that I still get it to this date. Like, I've been exclusively running my side of this business for over 5 years, and people still like, oh, you're working for your dad still, and be like, that is a misconception that people have, and to me, I don't have the ego need to correct people, but it did affect me subconsciously, it drove me to push myself to perform more. So it worked for me in that sense, because I was like, nope, no one's going to have anything to say about that. I'm going to earn my keep here, and I'm going to, like, I had something to prove there, but that helped me, if that makes sense. That's the best way that I could explain that little story that I was running. So, like, you can't ask for help, because if you ask for help, people are going to think that you're not capable or that you can't do it. And so that drove me. But I now know that that's not really true. So I do ask for help now.
Right, and I call that imposter syndrome.
That's the word. Yes.
It's like at some point, there's this subconscious fear that somebody's going to walk in your office, they're going to kick the door in, point their finger at your face, and say, you don't belong here. You have no business. We figured it out. You're a fraud. Pack your stuff. Get out. You're being replaced. Everybody knows that you're a fraud. And
that's so funny.
Is that? But that's.
It's accurate. It's accurate because, as you were saying that, so it's not just what I previously mentioned. In addition to that, there was, you're forced to up your game being a female in this world. And I'm very pleased to see that our numbers are growing among the ranks, but it's a factor a little bit where you better be awesome, because you're not credible walking in the door yet. Prove yourself.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that. I don't want to look at it that way, but I will say that at that time I faced a lot of criticism, a lot of people on both the vendor side and competitors, like, oh, good for you. Because it's not only being female. I was young at the time. I was in my 20s. And it was like, oh, how cute. Like, you're going to run this? And I'm like, yeah, watch me. But I got a lot of that. Literally had men come up to me and be like, oh, where's your husband? And I'm like, no, yeah, is your husband coming? Nope, it's me. And I, and it doesn't anger me, but it's just, again, continues to point to how that's going to have to become it's going to have to be an obsolete concept. But I faced a lot of that over the last 10 years. And I now kind of rolls off my back, but it is something that does need to be mentioned if we're talking about imposter syndrome, because that played into that a lot in the beginning for me. I was like, I'm going to show these boys what's up, and, it is no longer a factor. But in the beginning, I want to thank everybody that did make those comments, because they drove me even more.
Yeah, it's interesting how, well, a story that I talked about on a recent podcast episode, there was a gentleman who was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, James Stockdale. He was shot down in Vietnam, ended up being a POW for 7 years, tortured viciously for 7 years. And he was quoted as saying, "This is going to be the defining moment in my life." And he didn't use it as an excuse. It didn't lead to entitlement. He said, this is going to be the defining moment in my life. And I found that one of the most beneficial things that I've learned about psychology, at least Todd's psychology, I don't know if this applies to everybody else, but when something happens, there are really two parts to that thing. There's the thing that happened, the event, and then there's the story that we tell ourselves. And we define the story. So like with James Stockdale, he told himself a story that empowered himself and got him through 7 years of torture. You stepped into a situation where you could have told a much different story, right? You could have told a story of people don't respect me. You could have made some alibis and come up with a less empowering, less helpful story, but your story was, yeah, watch me. So what advice would you give to people about that? Well, about the mindset? How important is mindset for construction or business owners in general, not just construction business owners, but how important is mindset, and how do you affect that narrative so you turn it into something that's helpful for you? Does that make sense?
It does. Mindset is everything. And if, for me, it's like, it's exactly what Scott Stockdale said. It's like defining moments. How are you going to show up in those moments? Are you going to come from a place of power? Are you going to make it something that will have a good outcome? Because that's 100% up to you. That's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're adults, we're responsible for our actions, and how nobody owes you anything. And I don't know, I was raised where there is no, my parents came here and they had the immigrant experience in New York, and they learned like nobody here owes you anything. You're not going to get what you want just by showing up. And so with an attitude, or is the mindset is be teachable. I think, I forget the woman, her last name is Dweck. It's a great book. It's actually called Mindset.
Yeah, Carol Dweck, great book.
Oh, amazing. And it's a game changer. I recommend any business owner does read that. But it's really about that. It's like, if you don't know how to play basketball, you want to be a great basketball player and you miss, like, are you going to quit and just go, recoil in the corner? No, you're going to keep at it until you're great at it. Nobody owes you anything. It's all about what you put into it. And I think that this is for business owners in the construction world, anywhere in life, in relationships, in how you deal with your family. It's never, what is that phrase? If you point your finger at someone else, there's three pointing back at you. And it really, to me, comes down to accountability, personal responsibility, right? Like, we are powerful in our own rights. And it doesn't mean that, because you're an expert or you're good at something or you're successful or you're wealthy, none of that entitles you to anything beyond what you're capable of doing for yourself. And that, I guess it's like a humility or a coachability that is required, right? Like, I'm not perfect. No one's going to hand me anything. And how am I showing up to this?
Yeah. And there are two mindsets that Carol Dweck talks about in her book. There's the growth mindset, which says, yeah, I suck at it now, but I'm going to work hard. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to get better. And I have the capacity to do better. And failure is just a step along the way to improvement. And
right. Failure is just data. Yep.
It's just like, okay, that didn't work. And it's okay. It's not to be feared, but people with a fixed mindset, they equate their performance with their value. So it's like the example she used is they took two groups of school children and gave them a pretty basic test. And one group of kids, when they did well, they told them, wow, you are so smart. You must be really smart. That's how they rewarded them. They reinforced that way. And then the other group of kids, when they scored a right answer, they said, wow, you worked really hard. And what they found was when they went to a more difficult test, the kids who were told they worked hard and they connected success with hard work were much more tough. They had more grit and they fought through challenges and even enjoyed those challenges. Whereas kids that had a fixed mindset where their success was based on some intrinsic characteristic, their DNA, when they made a mistake, then it caused them to avoid challenges in the future because they didn't think they had it in them. So if they made a mistake, that meant they were bad. And going back to something you said very early on, you said you train your people to take responsibility for their actions and be self-aware. And I think that there's probably some people listening to this who would say, what are you talking about? I'm not in control of my emotions. It's the Popeye mentality. I am what I am, and I just got a bad temper, and if somebody catches me on a bad day, it's their fault. I can't change it. Well, that's a fixed mindset. But I agree. Self-awareness is huge, and having a growth mindset, I would say it's almost necessary because especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to fail. And if every time you fail, you think you suck and you avoid those challenges that could lead to failure, you're never going to go anywhere. So, we are running up on time. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. What's one topic that you believe is not being talked about enough in the construction industry?
Wow. So many. If I were to pick just one, I would say, being from the standpoint of a subcontractor, I think a lot of us face. I was recently at an AEC conference, and I feel like subcontractors are treated like the riffraff of the AEC world. And I think subcontractors they face a lot of risk to make sure that they educate themselves and are able to. I don't know how to express one. So you might have to help me out here. So what I'm trying to say is what I notice, and I participate in, I have a board of peers that I meet with twice a year. We're all subcontractors and throughout the nation. And one of the things that I hear is like, I guess it's not managing clients, but making sure that, getting paid is a big issue, right, for everybody. But I think subcontractors always get the short end of the stick there. And I don't know that it's openly discussed because, cash flow is a problem for most businesses, but I think it hurts at the subcontractor level most. What I've noticed here locally is a lot of great businesses with many years under their belts have folded due to the inability to maintain their profitability, a lack of succession plan, a lot of these things, because people get caught up, especially at the subcontractor level, in their the day-to-day of running their business, getting that next lead, getting that next account, making sure that everything is running the way it should be, and not looking at the grand strategic vision. And those are things that happen in any business, but I think at the subcontractor level, from the people in my industry that I speak to, it's a mix of those things that need to be discussed more. An amazing technician that's interested in opening his business better get out there and learn about the business of doing business in order to survive and thrive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so, that's the biggest thing.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that subcontractors need to operate more strategically, and maybe it goes back to a term you used previously, which was to go hunt. And one of the things that I've seen with subcontractors is they tend to be less strategic, and maybe it's a mindset thing where general contractors are bringing work to them and sending them requests or invitations for bid or RFPs. So they're not out hunting. They're just waiting. They have inside salespeople instead of outside salespeople. But does that make sense? Does that resonate?
Yeah, that's one. So that's one thing at times. Also, but we're in an economy now where everybody has work. I mean, abundance of work. People are turning projects away, right? So we're in a good situation here, at least in this local market. What I am finding is people that I've seen that I've worked side by side with either bite off more than they can chew, or they're excellent in the field. They know how to run jobs, but they don't know how to run a business, and they don't know how to say no. Like, they take work on, they take projects on that they have no idea how they're going to complete, but they want to, revenue is vanity, right? I believe that strongly, because if it's not profitable, or if you cannot complete, that can come down on you really hard and destroy your business or your reputation, which is almost worse, because it'll, in fact, at the end, it'll be harder to recover from. So I see a lot of things that I wish I could just be like, listen, man, like, let me help you. It's simple things, but it's having the open-mindedness. What I'm finding is the people who are both technically savvy as an engineer or a builder or a tradesman and have a business and take the time to hunt for knowledge, right? Hunt for education. Like, it's not just finding the business, knowing how to run the business, the people. And so opening their minds to, yes, you're awesome at this, and go learn about XYZ. Go learn about how to read your financial statements. Go learn what that means. Go learn what the industry standard margins are. Go learn these things to sustain the longevity of the success of your business. Because guess what? You're not going to always be young and vibrant and energetic to run to 5 different jobs and be able to manage it all. You're going to want to train someone to do that for you, or to look and hire the right person to do that. And then you can manage your business from a more strategic position. So that long-term strategic vision, and being able to take all the functional business units of a company and all those responsibilities, and be able to understand the big picture, not just jumping like Tarzan from project to project and, figuring out after the fact whether you made money or not.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, I really appreciate you sharing, Gerri. This has been one of my favorite conversations so far. If people want to get in touch with you, find out more about your company, or reach out to you, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
I am available 24/7 via email. It's Gerri, Gerri, at airlogix, AIRLOGIX.co. Or they could call me at 718-947-1311, extension 221.
Excellent. Well, this has been fantastic stuff. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this. It's been a blast. And if there's ever anything I can do for you in the future, Gerri, don't hesitate to let me know.
Absolutely, Todd. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Be sure to reach out to Gerri. She was kind enough to provide her email address and phone number. If nothing else, thank her for taking the time to be on the podcast. Don't forget, you can get your free video series, The Secrets of Successful Contractors, by going to constructionleadingedge.com/owner. You can also schedule your free strategy call with this guy if you want to kick 2019 in the butt, if you want to put together a plan, and if you want 2019 to be different than 2018, or if you're listening to this in the future, if you want the next 12 months to be different than the past 12 months, if you want different results, you're going to have to do something different, and I want to help you get there. I'd love to get on the phone with you and talk about strategy, talk about some of the roadblocks that you're facing, help you clarify the vision and direction of your company, and identify some lead dominoes that you need to focus on. You can schedule your free call over at constructionleadingedge.com/call. And don't forget, for a limited time, I'm still giving away over $9,000 worth of resources when you sign up for a free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator program. You're going to get my Contractor Sales Accelerator, which is worth about $3,000, the Project Execution Formula, which is worth a couple $1,000. You're going to get the Mindset Upgrade. You're also going to be able to join an exclusive group of construction business owners and be part of that community. So you can do that at constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. And as always, I appreciate the ratings and reviews. If you could take a minute, leave a rating or review. And if you're listening on iTunes, you can get the instructions on how to do that over at constructionleadingedge.com/iTunes review. And that is all we have today, folks. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.